Good afternoon, everyone. I hope everyone had a good lunch. I am Janvi Das. I work for Varian, a Siemens and Linear's company as a product specialist. And happy to be here and thank you to the organizers for having me. So today I will be talking about HyperSight imaging solution, which is the latest technology addition into the Varian portfolio. Now, if we look at the trend, yes, IGRT is the way, but there are some challenges which we cannot ignore, which we see on a day-to-day basis, whether it's a motion artifact, whether you're doing a breath hold procedure and you see again there's an artifact there in your breath hold imaging. Metal implants also has artifacts, and then also when you are treating larger areas, then you see there could be an anatomy cutoff also. So for that, Varian has come with its latest edition, which is the HyperSight technology, where we can cater to or mitigate all these challenges which we see on a day-to-day basis for IGRT techniques. So what is HyperSight? HyperSight is a combination of hardware and software through which we are reinventing CBCT. We are trying to go ahead of only IGRT. We see better images, we see more accurate HU calculation, so which will give you more HU accuracy in the images in CBCT itself, which will give you better dose calculation. You can directly plan on these images now, and also it enhances the speed with which you can image or treat your patients. So a single breath hold in some of our platforms can be good enough for your breath hold imaging. It's so fast now. HyperSight has been launched in both our ring gantry and SIAM platforms. First, it was launched on the ring gantry platforms, which is basically the Halcyon and Ethos. So when I talk about speed, anything in a Halcyon or an Ethos being a ring gantry it is more efficient than a SIAM technology. But even though it was giving us 16 to 17 seconds of imaging time, that has been reduced to 6-second imagings with the addition of HyperSight. High soft tissue contrast, you get accurate HU values now, which is comparable to your CT image. Large field of view, I'll be giving the specifications. So a 43 by 43 panel size in the Halcyon or an Ethos has increased to 86 into 43. Reduced imaging dose, and the MAR algorithm, which is basically the metal artifact reduction. So when we talk about the HyperSight technology on the ring gantry platforms, Halcyon and Ethos, you have an imaging panel size of 86 into 43, which is the largest in the industry. Recently, it was also launched for the TrueBeam platform. While the speed is not as fast as on a Halcyon or an Ethos platform, the speed still increases by 50% faster. So a 1 RPM is now at 1.5 RPM. The other things like the high soft tissue contrast, or we talk about the HU accuracy, the larger field of view, or the MAR algorithm is consistent across the TrueBeam platforms as well. So when I talk about the imager, a 30 cross 40 imager is now increased to 43 into 43. Expanded field of view of 70 centimeter MAR and 50% faster in gantry speed. Now, this was the first HyperSight patient treated in Washington University. This paper suggests that for SBRT cases, if the mortality rate if you look at SBRT or the increased excess of care for patients, then they reviewed around 400k patients in a span of 2004 to 70. So per 100k persons, from 4 it reduced to less than 1 with the better access to care or SBRT. But when we talk about SBRT, a lot of people or clinicians don't get the confidence because they don't have a very good image quality to see the target when they're treating. So just to show what HyperSight does here is the diagnostic CT, simulation CT, and right next to that is the HyperSight CBCT. So the image quality is very much equivalent to a CT, diagnostic CT or a simulation CT. So here in case of a head and neck cancer, where we are not able to see the parotid or the other OARs in a CBCT image. With HyperSight, we are very well able to define where the parotid is. So when your patient goes through a weight loss or there is a shrinkage of the OARs, you can very well see it in the images and plan for a replan or an offline adaptive approach. Now talking about abdominal cases, this is the image quality, which we see a lot of soft tissues there, which we miss out on a regular CBCT image, but with HyperSight we can very well define all the crucial organs there. So talking about the Ethos technology, which is basically Radiant's online adaptive platform, which is sought after for mostly prostate cases. Some people are using it for head and neck and breast also. But we see that oligometastatic patients can really benefit from an SBRT, but because we are not able to see properly, people don't use it so often. But now with HyperSight, we go ahead. So HyperSight comes as default on the new Ethos platform, the latest version. So we see better now, and now the clinical cases where we can use online adaptive also, increases with the advent of HyperSight. So here in a case where the first day target was at one position, it moved to by 10 centimeters in the upcoming treatment schedule. Now talking about the speed, Ethos or a Halcyon technology or platform, it is reduced to 6 seconds per imaging. So where if you are treating a breath hold patient, you can very well image the patient without any motion artifact. With a very good comfortable breath hold for the patient as well, and you can see more with a larger panel size. So a scenario where there could be an anatomy cutoff, that can be altogether, it can be avoided in a HyperSight case. And now we come to the metal artifact reduction. This is also a very good example of how the metal artifact is removed or it decreased to a very significant level with the HyperSight technology. Now I have shown you the imaging quality, but what about the accuracy of the dose calculation? Because when we say we want to go beyond IGRT, we also want to position it that when a lot of people want to do offline adaptive radiation therapy, but because of the entire time taken or the efforts from the entire team, sometimes we don't act on it at the same when it is necessary exactly. So with HyperSight imaging, you get your onboard images which are HU accurate, so you can also plan on these images. So when we talk about the precision of it, the HU accuracy, basically we showed here the profile. The blue one is the HU of a simulation CT, and the red one is for the HyperSight. This was tested for the TrueBeam platform, so you can see both correspond with each other very closely. These are some phantom studies which was done. Again, 116 out of 117 gamma evaluations passed thresholds by 95% passing rate. So you can confidently plan on these images as well. So when we talk about the HyperSight on TrueBeam and an offline adaptive workflow, what the position of the CT in the whole workflow, that you have to do a re-CT, re-plan. Now with HyperSight on your TrueBeam or your Halcyon, you can replace that and you can actually plan on your CBCT image. So as I said, it is available on both TrueBeam and also the ring gantry platforms. So for Ethos, the specifications of the ring gantry platform, which is the 86 into 43 centimeters of the panel size, and all the other algorithms in that, it all comes for both platforms. 6 seconds imaging for both. In Ethos, it comes as a default, HyperSight. In Halcyon, we have different models, so HyperSight can be added as an option. And there is also a CBCT workflow on the Halcyon platform for the offline adaptive approach. So for that, you can define the acquisition protocols, you can select the patient orientation, topogram view can be taken, accusation would take around 6 to 60 seconds. A retrospective CBCT reconstruction, the slice thickness can be defined. So anything that you would do on a CT for a simulation of your patient, with the module, if you take it on your Halcyon also, which is called the Halcyon Guidance, you can actually do the simulation workflow as well on the Halcyon platform. So just to summarize what I said, faster imaging is ensured, whether it's on a link platform, like goes up to 6 seconds, but also on the CR platform, which is a TrueBeam platform, you get a gantry speed of 1.5 RPM, so you can more efficiently image your patients, and also when you're changing within fields, the gantry speed is faster here, so the treatment time or the on-couch time for your patient would reduce. Metal artifact reduction can be definitely seen. I shared the images. High soft tissue contrast, accurate HU values, towards going beyond IGRT and actually using these images for those calculations as well, and larger field of view where you can get the complete extent, or don't have to separate the imaging fields for your patient. With that, I would close my presentation and happy to take any questions.
So, thank you very much. We can take only one quick question.
Imaging, KDCCT.
Mic first. Can you give the mic?
In the Halcyon cure, you provide imaging as well as you have improved CBCT imaging. Okay.
So there are different models of Halcyon. So in Discover, we basically have just MD imaging. From there on, we have Elite, Focus, Guidance. In these three models, you will get MD plus KD imaging. So Hypersight basically comes into the models of Focus and Guidance. So Elite is just the usual KD-CBCT, and if you go towards Focus and Guidance, then you have your Hypersight added into that.
Okay. And you are still doing requirement now?
Yes. So it has its own shielding, so shielding. So that would reduce the radiation, the shielding requirement of the room and the sizes.
Okay. Thank you, Janvi. So we can.
Respected chairpersons, colleagues and friends. Now the topic which I am going to cover is challenges in the management of metastatic cancers in India. See, what I plan is, I will be presenting some of the cases. They are not anecdotal cases, but some of the stimulating cases where targeted therapy, immunotherapy, radiation, everything could do wonders. So, one of the misconceptions, even in our program also, this has happened. The branding everything as palliative care. Metastatic cancer means palliative care. That is the dictum. But the truth is that oncology cannot be practiced without knowing palliative care, and the palliative care cannot be practiced without knowing oncology. So we have to, previously our thought process used to be that anything which is not curable, then it is palliative. But that approach has to be changed, because our effort should be to make the disease chronic and make the patient survive, and the patient should be able to enjoy life with the family. See, the cancer is curable. Better terminology would be cancer is incurable. And we have, I don't have to describe in detail about various cancers to this other audience. But the better terminology would be cancer is incurable. And we have now, unlike what it used to be many years back, many decades back, we have a lot of new gadgets, targeted therapy, then tyrosine kinase inhibitors of different types, systemic therapy, RFA, cryotherapy, targeted radionuclide therapy, TARE. Then, of course, the use of cyberknife in dealing with pseudometastasis, etc. So, all these are aimed at the prolonging the survival of the patient, but at the same time giving good quality survival. So the first let us talk a little bit about breast cancer. Because breast cancer we see in 1 out of 8 women in the West, and I don't have to tell much about the hormone therapy, then triple negative, hormone receptor positivity, triple negative, HER2 positive, etc. to this audience. But with regard to HER2 positive disease, there have been a lot of major advances. And here we can see the trastuzumab approval in 1992, approval of the TDM1. Now there are newer agents like etoposide and also the trastuzumab deruxtecan, etc. So HER2 is a target for us to act. So here is a patient who actually had a surgery followed by the chemotherapy and also radiation treatment, in spite of which she developed a local recovery. And you can see how wonderfully one of the targeted therapies, that was lapatinib. Lapatinib could produce a reasonably good response and a comfortable life for the patients. But we all know that lapatinib is outdated now, probably because we have a newer agent by name tucatinib, which is having a better response rate and it can also cross the blood-brain barrier better. When we see a picture like this, in the past, immediately we used to think of a local treatment, either a surgery or a radiation treatment. But now that is gone. This is a HER2 positive breast cancer. You can see how it is healed with the trastuzumab. And then one of my patients, I would like to say that she was first seen in a tertiary cancer care center, regional cancer center, from where unfortunately she was sent home when she developed jaundice because of the liver metastasis. And she is a ESI beneficiary, and she came to our hospital, and she had, in fact, 168 injections of anti-HER2 therapy, initially trastuzumab, then of course the trastuzumab, emtansine, etc. And she was doing very well when unfortunately she died of COVID after surviving more than 7 years. So here you can see the disease and how it has responded. She is cutting a cake. Then the various treatments we had to use in her case, ranging from trastuzumab, lapatinib, capecitabine, etc. Here, actually, it is a patient, a 70-year-old patient, who had a modified radical mastectomy in 1992, and then she was on tamoxifen for 5 years. Then, in 2008, he developed a pleural effusion. So at that point, he had a bilateral orchiectomy, chemotherapy. She was restarted on tamoxifen. But then in 2014, he presented with the lung metastasis. It was BR positive, BR negative, and HER2 3+. So because of the HER2 positivity, we could treat him with anti-HER2 therapy, trastuzumab, and then trastuzumab, emtansine, etc. And in between, he also had, because of financial constraints, he had capecitabine, dapagliflozin, etc. So the thing is, with the treatment, he could survive up to 2021, almost 29 years, in spite of developing metastatic disease. So immediately, we should not, metastatic disease means we should not immediately jump to the conclusion that it is only palliative care. So here you can see which is he developing liver metastasis, he developed bone metastasis. Every day we could offer something. And you can also see how CEA could help in monitoring the treatments. This is again another patient, a teacher who had a T2 lump. She had a mastectomy. She took trastuzumab based chemotherapy only for 6 courses, and she was unwilling for that. But after some time, she developed metastasis. We can see the metastasis, liver metastasis here. But at this point, we started her on trastuzumab pertuzumab combination, FESCO. And with the FESCO, she went into complete response. And there was no lesion which could be biopsied. She even had endoluminal ultrasound guided evaluation where nothing could be found and she was left alone. But she was overconfident and she wanted to go and meet her son in the United States, and she did not undergo treatment for some time. But what happened was, when she came back, so during that period she was taking only Lapatin, but what happened was she developed a recurrence. She developed recurrence at the same site. So currently she is still alive, but she is now on trastuzumab deruxtecan. So that is another lesson which we have to learn, that it is possible for us to prolong the survival and control the disease even when there is extensive metastatic disease. This is also another patient, a teacher, again HER2 positive disease. She had chemotherapy, she developed brain metastasis, she had SRS, 5 fractions, 30 grain, 5 fractions. But then there was residual disease and it was progressing. She was developing seizures. She was started on various treatments like trastuzumab, capecitabine, then fruquintinib, trastuzumab deruxtecan of late. So you can see the lesion. After the radiation treatment, this was like this. But once we gave treatment, you can see that there is very good response. And it further responded, and the edema, everything is reduced, she is still alive. Same thing is there for estrogen receptor positive disease. We have a very effective treatment now. Say once upon a time when we see this, definitely we used to think of surgery or local radiation treatment. But actually we have to understand that hormonal therapy can induce apparently complete response. Local treatment alone doesn't matter. We have to give a systemic treatment. So this is again another lady who had a HER2 positive and ER positive disease. She had a chemotherapy and then initially she was HER2 negative. Then she developed a HER2 positive because she became HER2 positive. It is important for us to periodically rebiopsy because it is actually a fight between the tumor and versus the patient and their treating doctor. So whatever we do, the tumor will definitely try to overcome that. So we have a lot of gadgets for hormone therapy. I am not going into the details. So metastatic disease, we can definitely employ all these very judiciously. Similarly, the availability of PARP inhibitors. It is possible for us to do a genetic testing and find out the suitability for use of PARP inhibitors. Of course, PARP inhibitors will definitely be helpful in definitely producing a good response and then extension of survival. So here is a patient who in fact had a liver metastasis. We never thought that she will be able to make her survive, but even with the use of cobalt radiation, her liver metastasis disappeared. Of course, it has to be combined with a very effective systemic treatment. Today she is still alive after 16 years. So this is a case of brain metastasis. So this patient didn't have SRS. SRS is not always required, but we can have fractionated radical radiation treatment, and it can be combined with a very, very judicious systemic treatment. That is also very, very important. So he has survived more than 13 years and then died due to other reasons. So when coming to lung cancer, we have all these various modalities available. So with regard to lung cancer, what we have to do is at least a minimum 12 gene genetic evaluation we have to do and find out whether it is ALK positive, ROS1 positive, etc. But now, for ALK positive, we have very good drugs like Alectinib, but now still we have Brigatinib and then Lorlatinib, etc. So newer drugs are evolving. Similarly, immunotherapy has also made a big impact in improving survival in metastatic lung cancer, and it has spread over thoracic cancer. So, what is the problem is the concept of palliative care. Kerala is a state where we have a doctor who got Padmasri, and definitely he has done a good work and promoted palliative care everywhere. So much so that patients always demand for palliative care. They don't want any sort of chemotherapy or radiation, things like that. So this lady had reported to our medicine department with a poor effusion. And they referred the patient to me. I wanted to do a workup, but the patient was reluctant because the family wanted only palliative care. So that was their thinking. So this was the picture. But then empirically, finally, without getting any diagnosis, after the patient on Jefferson, we know that osimertinib is better than that, but she had a cheaper drug, Jefferson. She survived more than 1.5 years with that. So, the approach of the people have to change. Here is a patient, young patient, who has developed brain metastasis, in fact. Actually, first he had chemotherapy and then he developed a brain metastasis. At that point of time, it was biopsy and found out that it is ALK positive. So this person is a radiologist who is alive even now, past 8 years. With targeted therapy, he is doing well. This is again another adenocarcinoma lung, a female who also had a hepatic metastasis, vertebral, pleural metastasis, pericardial effusion, etc. And then we also found that she is ALK positive, so she had the targeted therapy with Alectinib. You can see the lesion in the PET-CT, how big it was. Unresectable. Our radiotherapy, I don't know what it could have done. But even without radiotherapy, the patient received Alectinib and she also had a brain metastasis. And for that, no radiation was given. She is alive even today. So this is another patient, a young patient, an artist who developed squamous cell carcinoma. And here the patient had a nivolumab. You can see if somebody is seeing this, immediately we may think of radiation treatment. But he never had radiation. He had only nivolumab. He has received around 70 courses of nivolumab. He is alive after 7-8 years. So much changes have happened, developments have happened in system treatment. So you should not immediately brand every metastatic case as palliative. he had adrenal gland metastasis which also responded. So these are the achievements which we get with the proper radiation, proper the systemic treatment. Say ovarian cancer patient who developed brain metastasis. Of course, we had a very good systemic treatment, and then surgery for the brain mets and radiation. Patient is still alive after 5 to 6 years. Now coming to renal subcarcinoma. Once upon a time when I was a postgraduate student even, we never had any effective treatment. Chemotherapy used to smile at chemotherapy, but now because of the advent of drugs like pasopanib, etc., you can see the patient has survived many years. So this is actually a case of CA colon, metastatic CA colon. The patient lived for 5 years, more than 5 years. What they have achieved is she could see the daughter getting married and she could see the grandchild. So these are the things which we could achieve. So the problems we face is we don't have things like insurance policies in USA and the NHS in UK, things like that. In Indian setup, we have government, private, and only insurance. Maybe only 20 to 30% of patients may have insurance. We have drugs, but we have the cost is prohibitive. Then the problems are distance to travel, lack of decentralization, crowding of patients, innovator, biosimilar, generics, genetic evaluation and the profiling that has to be done. It is costly. Alternative medicine is standing in our way. Then lack of awareness. That is the problem. Palliative care neighborhood network in Kerala. When we prescribe Kamara, they will come and supply some generic medicine instead. So all these things are obstacles actually. So early option of palliative care, lack of oncology awareness among doctors, and high cost of medicines. So I would like to say even the glioblastoma patients have survived sometimes if we treat the patient aggressively. This is actually a case of a CLR. It was found to be a red fusion positive because we did a next generation sequencing of foundation 1 and the patient is getting selpercatinib on a compassionate ground and she has survived more than 7 years. She is still on selpercatinib. You can see the wonderful response. This is the foundation 1 report. But on the other hand, sometimes, so this you can see the CEA level, how we could monitor. On the other hand, we have a patient, actually he is my classmate, who celebrated silver jubilee after the development of ovarian cancer. So you can, when we finally did her disease progress, finally we found that her lesion is red fusion positive and we started her on selpercatinib. So what is called a tumor agnostic therapy we have done in her case. Normally it is indicated for lung cancer, but sometimes we can use the same medicine if the same sort of genetic aberration is persisting. Precision oncology, liquid biopsy, precision radiation oncology, artificial intelligence has come into existence and it has been a big breakthrough and so many newer advances and solutions we are getting because of artificial intelligence. So this is actually the chain of events, molecular guided therapeutic treatment. Tumor agnostic therapy is one such thing. So this is one word about.
Sir, can we conclude?
Yes, I can conclude. Wait. one or two slides. Liquid biopsy has been a big breakthrough in colorectal cancer, then bladder cancer, etc. and also in lung cancer. So thank you very much for the listening. There are many things to be discussed. Time is short, but the fact is that metastatic cancer means you should not immediately jump to the conclusion that it is only palliative care, as it happened in the print of the program.
Sir, thank you, sir. Thanks for a nice talk about the palliative care and the metastatic cancers. Few years ago, probably in 2010, we were now under the impression that palliative care means patients who live hardly for 3, 4, 5 years. Probably now with the advent of targeted therapy, immunotherapy, people are living for 2 decades, 3 decades, as you have shown. Probably these sort of people who live with the disease on treatment, should we find out a different term, different coin, not cure? Probably I would say cancer conquerors, as you rightly mentioned in the initial. So those who are living for decades together with the treatment, with the disease.
Yes, we should make it a chronic disease and the patient can live for years with good quality survival, as the result for diabetes mellitus. As we find out more and more markets, it will be possible for us to still improve. It is happening. You may be knowing better than me.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Now we will move on to the next step.
So I think over to our Dias for the next session.
Dear speakers, kindly stick to the time. We are reducing the time because we are already 1 and 2 hours late. The other program either
As a token of appreciation from our organizing committee. I would like to call our esteemed speaker, Dr. C.S. Madhu.
Hello, sir. Okay. Look here, sir. सर लुक यार इधर इधर क्या रहा था look here sir okay sir best way possible.
Dr. Manish Bhushan Pandey sir, please come to the dais. So, good afternoon everybody, and so I'm going to talk about one of the things and how we should do MR-guided radiotherapy. It is because there are several issues involved in day-to-day delivery of radiation. The tumor
So there are several issues. The tumor is not static during the course of radiotherapy. So therefore there is a need to monitor the tumor, and for this we have another technology at our disposal. And this we installed in August 24, and so far we have completed 200 patients of various tumor types on this equipment. So this is basically a hybrid machine. It has got a 1.5 Tesla MRI. You can see that yellowish thing is the MRI board. And then there is a ring entry of the linear accelerator with waveguide and multi-leaf collimator around it. So both the things move simultaneously when patient is put on the table. So this is the picture of our installation. So this is a linear, and this was at the time of installation with the RF cage. So what MR is market by Lecter. So it is a hybrid machine of 1.5 Tesla diagnostic quality MRI. And then we have a platform for online. So it's very different offline adaptive versus online adaptive. Offline means you cannot do much adaptation while the patient is on table. If there is a problem, you go back, you change your treatment plan, and then you come next day and treat the patient. While in online, the patient lies on the table, you remove the tumor, you do a radiation planning, and simultaneously deliver radiation. So this is the difference between offline and online adaptive radiotherapy. So we have to take care of systematic and random errors which happen day to day. And this is the difference of MR-based linac versus the CT scan-based linac, that it gives an excellent soft tissue contrast. So I will show you some of the images of prostate cancer and the pancreatic cancer, how well they are visualized. And we can do online adaptation on a daily basis. So this you must have seen in your own practice that prostate doesn't remain static. Depending on rectal distension, the prostate moves up and down, and so is with the bladder. In head and neck, we see shrinkage of tumor, weight loss, that also requires so many modifications. And all the tumors, all the sites are moving. We thought head and neck doesn't move, but you can see head and neck moves a lot during treatment. So this is the quality of MR. You have much better quality of image. You can reduce the margins, we adapt, intra-interfraction changes, and then monitor the motion. Cine MRI pictures I will show you, and we can assess the response. So this is the workflow. Because of possible time, I won't be able to cover, but this is a workflow of how we integrate CT and MR both in the treatment planning, and ultimately the whole treatment is delivered by MR-guided radiation. So, coming to pancreatic cancer, you can see we deal with so many of them. Most of them are inoperable, but in operable pancreatic cancer, pre-op radiation along with chemotherapy gives better results than surgery alone. So this is a quantum jump in pancreatic cancer. This is a pre-op panc trial, which shows that if you give pre-op radiation and chemotherapy before surgery, there is an improvement in survival. So this is the trial showing that pre-op chemo radiation is better than surgery alone, and it reduces toxicity and improves tumor control. Pancreatic tumors located at a very difficult site, surrounded by stomach, duodenum, small intestine, which are very radiosensitive. They don't tolerate radiation that well. And you can see MR-guided radiation, you can clearly see the tumor which you need to treat. And you can modify the dose. This is a dose distribution on the table while the patient is getting treated. And if you want to modify the treatment to small gut, duodenum, and stomach, you can do right there at the time of treatment delivery. So these are the, nowadays in pancreas, SPI is preferred over 25 days of treatment because it gives better local control and less toxicity. So this is, we were talking of operable. So in an operable condition also you can give new equipment, SBRT, and then embark on surgery, and you can see local control and 1 year local regional control in the range of 80-85%, which we never used to get in pancreatic cancer. So in unresectable, which we see day in, day out, that we do MR guided after the chemotherapy, you give SPRT and then maybe 3 to 4 cycles of more chemotherapy. And we can deliver a very high dose, 30 to 40 days, 5 fraction, which is a very high dose, which we can deliver to the pancreas, and we can see 1 year overall survival of around 75%. So this is one of our cases, the pancreatic cancer, 61-year-old lady, inoperable because of the periportal node as well as the local findings. She got 4 cycles of chemo and then SBRT 45 days. And you can see here the contouring, the sign color is duodenum, the tumor is kind of infiltrating the duodenum. This is day 1. So every day we are checking the doses to the tumor, to the VTV, to the intestine, to the stomach. So you will see green means the doses constants achieved. And then you see here in this day, day 2, some of the constants could not be achieved, still we gave radiation. Then in 3rd day, we got the PTV coverage, the duodenum was still not that, it was exceeding by a day or 2 days. But you can see here on 4th day, it was meeting the constants. So in the 5th day also, there are more greens than yellow and red. So this is a composite plan that even if on one day you may not achieve the constant, but all together you have achieved what you wanted, and patient showed a complete response. So this is the PET scan. In 2024, this is July, and it's still about 19 months disease-free with hardly any toxicity. And we all know pancreatic radiation has a lot of toxicity. So this is the kind of image quality you can see on this machine. In the Cine MRI, suprarenal metastasis, you can see how clearly this is the PTV green color and the adrenal suprarenal or the adrenal tumor is within the PTV throughout the treatment. In prostate cancer also, there is a very good image and a very good adaptation. You can see tumor very clearly, and I will show some of the images. So this is a comparison. In CT on the right side, the intersection between prostate and rectum is blurred. So we don't know where prostate is finishing and where rectum is starting. But in MRI, you can see very clearly the peripheral zone which I have marked in white. So here you can see exactly where is the dominant nodule, where is the interface with the rectum. You can see how clearly the rectum is seen and the interface, and we can prevent rectal toxicity to practically all patients. So this is a patient of ours which you can see day to day the tumor is shrinking, and we can modify each day. It's not we can modify 1 or 2 times in a whole course, but we can modify each day. And when you can modify the dose distribution, you can see on this slide, there's some dose spilling into the rectum, but we can, while patient is lying down, we can re-optimize and then save the rectum and deliver the dose safely. So this is about, you can see here, this is so this is kind of image quality you see in Cine MRI while patient is getting treated. The prostate is within the green ETV, and in all phases.
If you want to understand multi-organ, you just think of expecting and how you get the colors and the variance. So this Monte Carlo method is totally depends on probability theory, and it has very powerful algorithms that are used in all spheres of our life, maybe radiology or nuclear medicine or anywhere. So a lot of work are done. As I told you, this is a random sampling of particle histories and distribution of scattered radiation, number of histories are taken, then it is converged or statistical convergence, and then particle dose. So, as the particle lose energy in the tissue, deposited energy is accumulated in the boxon, which are then mobilized to use the dose. So, this is how the energy, this is well predicted energy deposition which takes place from the photon beam machine and moves inside the patient. There are modeling of the machine, and then you can see when we commission the newer unit. You can see this is the modeling of a particular linac. You have what is the finite photon source, what is the frequency modulation, and clotting filters, collimators, lasers, etc., MLCs, in fact. So this is machine modeling. So this is about the machine. And then when we take the data during commissioning companies and they model the beam and they send it back to us, we configure in our system, and this is how it is done. So workflow of multi-color simulation is this is the defined beam source model, transport properties through the patient chemistry, then clad interactions, pump down, nuclear production, etc. And suppose that can be positioned in the boxer, and this is normalized, as I told you, to calculate the dose. Why it is important? Why multi-color is important? Because this is the gold standard. Accuracy provide the model like pencil.
We have not seen much, and the acute genotoxicity also is a short-lived in about 24%, much less than the CT guideline. So this is, you can see here in one of our patients, that the patient was planned for prostate cancer, and you can see nicely planned on the day of treatment. But on one of the days, through the treatment, you can see on the right side, now the rectal gas came, and the whole volume of the PTV volume kind of dropped onto the rectum. So we interrupt the treatment, we sometimes make the patient get up, he can go to loo and come back, and we restart the treatment. So that is all we can do. So I will come to this conclusion. I had a few slides more, but the time was reduced from 15% to from 15 minutes to 10 minutes. Okay, so this is my conclusion. Amartinac is most advanced technology, possible to image the tumor and treat the tumor with dose optimization also simultaneously. It can show improved results, but the maximum benefit is in controlling the side effects. And you can also monitor the DWI images, monitor the response also. Thank you.
Thank you for saving at least 5 minutes of organizing. And thank you very much for delivering this talk. And we are surely proud of you because this MR-Linac technique is available in India at 2 places only. One in Hyderabad and one is under guidance of Dr. A.K. Anand. So we must congratulate him. And he has completed 1 year of experience in treating patients in MR-Linac, which is soon to be a very boom in radiation.
मनीष भैया As you see from the slides, it was from 60 to 78, but the information even in the office or with anybody is hardly anything. So why not to constitute a committee, or I can constitute a committee of such committee who can keep the records of the older people together. From the morning we are listening to lectures of senior oncologists. 10 years or 15 years down the line, they might not be here to tell the Gen Z generation. But if there is a committee who can keep their records, and if somebody is searching for someone of these people, they can at least have some information at that stage. That's the point. And the disclaimer is, I presented an oration in Fortis Hospital this year itself in April. So part of that info is here also. So those who attended there, it will be a revision, but for the rest of the gentry, I hope this is something new to offer. Dr. B.N. Lal, as I said, he was the professor and head of the department of King John Medical University. That time it was, college. That time it was not a university. It came to become a university in 2003. Before that it was King John Medical College. So he was there from 60 to 78. For a very large time he was there. And the later stages he became the principal of the college also. So only information I could gather from my sources was that he became the chairman of the Indian College of Radiology in 1978, which is an academic wing of Indian Radiological and Imaging Association, because that time the department was called Indian Department of Radiology. It was not bifurcated into Department of Radiodiagnosis and Department of Radiotherapy, which was done later by the amendment of the Parliament and by the original Department of Radiology bifurcated into Radiotherapy and Diagnosis in 1988. And this is the paper I could gather from the website somewhere after doing a lot of research. So that's the information, but I know that this first cobalt unit was installed during his lifetime when he was there in the institute. So with that little information, I start the day. And today I am going to speak about human-machine teaming as key to predicting prognosis. Let the data speak itself. Why I am talking on this point? Because, as you know, everybody is talking of AI. We are talking of AI. We know that AI can do that, AI can do this. And there is also some apprehension that will AI take over, the manpower will be reduced. There are so many things that people are concerned about. Even this gentleman, these are the two people who got the Nobel Prize for Physics in 2024, and they have worked on machine learning. And Geoffrey Hinton is an English, but living in Canada for the last so many years, and he is a professor in the University of Toronto, and he is nowadays considered as the godfather of AI. In 2023, up to 2023, he was giving consultation to Google also, but he resigned from there because he apprehends the deleterious fact that he can foresee the future of AI. And now he has his own company which is spreading awareness about what AI can go wrong in human life, so what should we do and what should we not. Let's see what goes. So up to this part, you all know what is artificial intelligence and what is machine learning and what is deep learning. So AI refers to the creation of machines or tools that can simulate human thinking and behavior. We all know it. Everywhere. You read it. It is an array of technology that enable machines or tools to perform tasks that usually use human intelligence. But what is machine learning, which is a subset of artificial intelligence? It is a subset of AI in which machine or tools learn from data to make classification. In the morning, while radiation oncologists were telling the classification so those all things can be done by machine learning. Classification, depending upon the texture of something, some parameter, any parameter you can take of a particular thing, and on that parameter you can classify the things. And then the other way you can make predictions, either with or without human supervision. What is that? With or without human supervision? You are taking the data, and with that data, either guiding the data or without guiding the data. I will come to that in the later slides. But before that, what it requires to do all that is the data. Data is the fuel of machine learning and deep learning algorithms and models are combustion engines. What does it mean? For everything that we say that artificial intelligence is doing, that means there is some data coming to the machine, and machine is giving you the output. That we only know the output as of today, but we don't know what is going inside the machine when the input is coming from there. So today I will show you a few glimpses of those things, what is going on inside the engine, how the input is going, and inside that machine what is going on, so that you get a certain output. If you torture the data long enough, it will confess. What does it mean? If you have seen a criminal in a police custody, he will say never, he will accept whatever he has done wrong. But if you give him a third degree treatment, ultimately he will confess that yes, he has done the crime. Similarly, the data, if you look in a data, very big data, I will come to that, how big is the data. If you look at the data, you will see that there is nothing in that. On visualization, you will see there is nothing about this, that you can get any information from the data. But if you torture it, means you can clean it, you do the processing, then you will get turned into knowledge, and you can ultimately get the inferences and predictions that you see today. So how you do it? Big data, as we say, it has 5 constituents: volume, velocity, variety, veracity, and value. Because time is running fast, also go fast. In big data, in radiation oncology, what is that? You have certain imaging modalities, you have ultrasound, you have CT, you have MRI, you have so many devices for imaging. Every time you are creating the data. If you go, we are saying at the desktop, the images, behind the images it is the data. In the pixels, the attenuated pixels, you see the data. So that data is accumulating. And the imaging archives are growing rapidly. In the earlier days, you used to have the museum in the radiology department. But now these are the digital libraries. So all that data is now, amount of data is enormous. There is an increasing amount of imaging and diagnostic modalities. Every day you see. Earlier it was certain, then it is coming to the bedside also. So you are doing nothing but increasing the data. Every day you are doing the emails, YouTube and all that. What is that? It is the data. And interpretation and quality differs between care providers. That is comes under the veracity. I have shown here. Here, these are the 5 things. Now, what is the volume? Volume is magnitude. See, what we see in our desktops or in laptops, we talk of megabytes, GB, terabytes. Up to that only. But we are talking of petabytes, zettabytes, and even after that. You see 1 terabyte is 1000 GB, 1 petabyte is 1 million GB, and gigabyte is 10 to the power GB. So this is the size of the data that we come across. These many of emails per minute, see 200 million, 6 million Google searches per minute. This is in fact 2024 data. 5 billion in internet user in various forms. Internet of Things devices in 2025 is 75 billion. So you can see the fight is for this one. This is the market is growing so fast up to this 832 billion US dollars. It was the projection for 2025. So that is why you see the big players coming together. That is how the big data has increased in last 15 years, 14 years. That is what I was calling ZB. Now data mining and machine learning. These are the, data mining is the use of statistical method. Now because I have divided my talk into two parts. One is what I am explaining now, the things behind it. And the next part, I will be showing you the experimental part. So bear with me. Data mining is the use of statistical methods to find the patterns in the data and explain the phenomena behind it. And machine learning, data mining algorithms are used to build a model. So in the first part, we are doing the statistical method. I will show you how it is done. And then these, based on these data, you make the models which work for you and ultimately give you some result that we call AI in use. So what is machine learning and when it is used? Very complex problems for which there is no solution with a traditional approach. Here we used to calculate manually, then calculators came, and so many things. But ultimately the data becomes so normal that everything came beyond it. So came the machine learning. There are two types of, one is the supervised learning, like we study from nursery, LKG to the master's level or PhD, whatever we have done or MD. So we are taught by the teacher. That is called the supervised learning. There is unsupervised learning. Suppose I go to school, I drop out and learn myself. That is sort of unsupervised. Nobody is supervising me, I am doing it myself. That is how the machine does it own. It is called unsupervised. In the supervised, somebody is teaching you, you are showing him the result, the teacher is saying no, it is correct, not correct, then you are repeating the things. That is the supervised. But in the unsupervised, machine is doing it itself. And for every correct answer, it is giving a reward. So this is the basic procedure here. First, we acquire the data. For any patient that is coming to the hospital, we are acquiring the data in any form, whether it is imaging or it is going to the pathological department, acquiring the data. There also we are acquiring the data, or it is going for the blood testing or other things. So this is the data acquisition. Then we find that the data is acquired, but once you give it to somebody to put it in the computer, he may or she may not put every data correctly. So we need to clean it, like we do everything. Grooming in the house, झाड़ू लगाते हैं इस जगह में साफ करने के लिए. We need to clean the data. That is called data cleaning and pre-processing part here. Then once it has been cleaned, then we model it based on the data. We model it, and then once we have produced some model, we need to evaluate it whether we have created a right model or not. So that part is called model evaluation, and then data visualization, because once it becomes open to the public, that has to be validated. So that's the part of these. So this is all about that only. And output can be predictive or descriptive. When I say descriptive, there are so many static statistical methods to do the things that will be covered under the descriptive part. And predictive, patient is coming, you have created some model based upon your previous patients, and then you are making the prediction whether the person is malignant or not, based on your previous experience on that particular institution. So now the second segment of the study is the experimental part that I have done for you. This I presented last month in Adelaide World Congress. This is exploratory data analysis of trends in female breast cancer incidence vis-a-vis mortality in Indian scenario. So I have done the exploratory data analysis for this, whatever I could gather from Indian data bank. EDA is the name given to a large body of statistical and graphical techniques which provide ways of looking at data to determine relationships and discover patterns and trends, identifying outliers and unveil hidden insights, finding measures of central tendency and extremeness, etc. All these you have studied sometime in SPM department. While studying MBBS, everybody has, those who have done MBBS, MD, they have studied the central tendency, outliers, what they are. But I will be showing you and explaining in very brief. So, earlier we saw MR-Linac, 60 crore machines or 80 crore machine. Before that, Halcyon, 40 crore machine. I am talking about 40,000 machine. That is your laptop. So everybody can have or have already have a laptop. If they wish, they can do it. And if they have, they need to. This is a programming language, very simple language. Now it has been introduced in class 7 itself. So anybody can navigate. And these are the requirements of the laptop. So you can yourself see it. Like we have in, whenever we study, we go to libraries. Used to go to libraries earlier. Now we have libraries available in our computers itself. We can Google it and go to the library. Similarly, for the programming language, there is a library. There are hundreds of applications for a particular thing that you want to do. You will be like for a particular subject, you take a book from the library. Similarly, for a particular procedure, what you need to do is to take one library. These are called libraries of the programming language. Like for NumPy, NumPy is a specialized library for numerical computation. If you want to do numerical computation, I will be showing you the exploratory data analysis for statistical analysis. So I will use NumPy. Pandas, if you have a file, you want to, suppose you have done a CD, you have an image there, and you want to send it to my laptop. Usually you cannot see it in laptop, but I can see it because I have a program and I can convert it into a certain data frame where I can see those images which you see in the CD room. So that I can do with the help of the Pandas. Then there is Matplotlib. You can like using graphs in Excel and so many things that you can see using Matplotlib. And so many things. Machine learning, as this is a scikit-learn library is there. So there are so many libraries. Depending upon your requirement, you can download that library into your computer. It is freely available and you can play with it. Now yes, I was talking about the data. You see what is this? This is, you cannot make out anything out of this. This is nothing for you, but this is most important. This is the, if you look at this, this is this. This is Wisconsin data of CLS. When you see this, you say this is rubbish. When you say this is very well defined, you say this is the ID of the patients. This is around 700 patients. Very nicely depicted. There are some 30 parameters only I can cover in this page this much, but they are far beyond this. So 30 parameters, and down the line there are 669 something like that patients. Very nicely defined. But if you see in that particular form, you cannot make out anything. So this is only 679 patients. But if you are dealing with, say, 1,000, 10,000, 1 million, 100,000 patients, your computer cannot work on that. If you have Excel, hardly you can do anything with that. Or manually you cannot even think of. But if you have this program, within, I will show you now. This is from the estimated number of incidents and mortality of breast cancer in India. I looked at this because this is the reply of the central government minister to one query in the parliament. So whatever data is given there of mortality and incidences is the true I personally feel, and this data I have presented in Adequate also. So this is the data. They must have taken it from ICMR, but since this is provided in the parliament itself, so I am taking it. I have referenced it. This is the data, state and union territory wise. There are 28 states and 8 union territories. All the data is here, starting from 2019 to 2023. I have done some more work, so from ICMR I have taken 3 years before that also, so that I have a larger data with me. This is an Excel file, nicely arranged because there are 28 states and 8 union territories, so overall 36 numbers only, so you can arrange it in Excel, that's not a big deal. But as I said, if you have 10,000 or 1 million, you cannot put in Excel everything, you cannot do it manually. So what I do, suppose any number, you give me any number, 1 million, 2 million, 10 million, billion, I will just import these 4 libraries from there, what I explained earlier, and write just one line of program. And this has arranged the same. You can see that this looks like the same Excel file here. 621331218. This looks same Excel file, but this is not Excel file. This is called data file. And this is INC, not Indian National Congress, but incident, number of incidences in 2016. This is mortality 2016, similarly up to 23. As I said, I have some more data with this. And I got for all these basic statistics. What is this? This is the total number of counts. This is mean. This is standardization. This is minimum number. Against any column, what is the minimum number? 25% means, if you know the box plot, 25% reflect first quartile. Then 50%, this is your median. 75% is third quartile, and maximum number of the last one. You see here, this one. This is the box plot of the. So any number of rows, any number of columns, there is no restriction. And within just one line or 2 lines, you will arrange them in such a nice fashion. I have plotted this box plot by writing these 4 lines only. See, this is the minimum, this is the median, and this is the mean. I hope everybody is aware of median, mean, minimum, maximum. This is the first quartile, the lower line. This is the second quartile, this is called median. This is third quartile, and this is fourth quartile. Any number beyond this is called outliers. This figure is, I thought, very interesting while playing with the data. You see, from 2013 to 2023, I thought this relationship, 0.372, number of mortality versus number of incidence cases, 0.372. Then what I did, each state, each union territory, I calculated individually, manually also. I got 3.72 for each one, for national average also, for each state also, for each union territory also. This is very interesting. I'm going to write a paper on it very soon because, but I mean that year-wise distribution is this one. You see, from 0 to 36 states and union territories, and this is the number of patients incidences starting from 2016 to 2023. This is again by one line of programming language. Now you see, top 5 states. Why I am saying this? Because I have not done much of the work. Just by giving one line or two line in the Python, I could draw anything that you wish. I see people in university, medical university, hospital, depending upon the statistics department of a university or going there and there. But so easily we can plot anything you dream of, and you can plot it. So any relationship between variables, any parameters. Top 5 states of the maximum number of acute cancer incidences in 2023. UP, Maharashtra, West Bengal, Bihar, this is the number of patients here. And bottom 5 states here. Now highest growth in cancer incidences. You see here, Dadra and Nagar Haveli is showing 36.8. This is a misnomer. Why? You see, we always say in statistics, unless you have a large number of parameters, statistics saying 80% out of 10 patients is there is no meaning. 8 patients out of 10, you say 80%, it has got no meaning. Out of 10,000, 80% is significant. So in Dadra and Nagar Haveli, as I say, here 36.8. But if you look at this, there are only 52 cases of incidences. So from the growth percentage, it looks there is a very high growth. But if you look at the numbers, any one or two you add one or two numbers, and the percentage will suddenly boost up. So that is not the every time, unless you have a large statistic, you should not rely upon the percentage like that. Similarly, for Lakshadweep, if you say the lowest growth is 7.6, again Lakshadweep total number of incidences is hardly 40. So you cannot rely on that. On the basis of the percentage, if somebody is writing a paper and without looking at the data. Now, this is mortality versus incidence versus mortality. Now I am interested in this one. If you look at this, you see this is the age group of females 15 to 39, 40 to 64 and 65 plus. The crude incidence of cancer. If you add this one and double it, even this group is larger than that. So this 40 to 65 age group, this is as per Indian government's records. This is not anybody's record, this is government of India's record. 40 to 64 age group is more than if the other two groups are added together and doubled, even more than that. So probably you can analyze as oncologists in the days to come or give opinion to the respective governments what should be done to this group. Because only while going through the literature, I found only 2% of the females go for screening in this age group. So this is really alarming. While we speak so much of breast screening and other things, if 2% of younger age group person they go for screening, this should be looked into. And there's an example is from my own institute. Can I take 5 minutes more? Otherwise, I can sum up here only. So this is from King George's University. You see there is 2 years data, and this is there are 4 departments contributing numbers, and this is the directly I have pasted it in this slide. So you see, this is the only one line I have given. I have got this, and I have now arranging this one into PowerPoint. This is the number. You see the sum here 1005, but if you add up our male and female, you see the sum 1410. Why the difference? Because I said earlier, the cleaning has to be done here. If you look at the this one is missing, this one is missing, there are 3 more missing, so many down the line there is missing. Any missing part, it will not include in its analysis part, so it will clean that. This is called cleaning. Otherwise, what you can do, you can take the average of the rest of the data and put that average there, or the mean, or whatever you want to fill up that particular line. If it is not filled, it will clean that data. The clean whole line, that patient will be removed from this one. So that is again this statistics for that. If you want to include the statistics of object part also, object means which are non-numerical. So that can also be done by using this line. But since the time has come, this is we have one surgeon that we have presented this in March month in South, and the same we have presented last week in Melbourne also with 282 patients data in hernia surgery. But I will skip that because you can see. So in summary, I can conclude, you are what you eat. What we eat, that is how we do. Similar is the case with the machines. The phrase applies not only to humans but to models as well that we create. So AI algorithms are only as good as the data used to train them. So if you train them properly, you get the proper output. If you are stuck somewhere or you have committed something wrong, it will produce accordingly the output. AI system will produce biased outcomes accordingly. This is particularly problematic in healthcare, where biased AI systems can lead to unequal treatment of patients. The integration of AI in healthcare brings about ethical concern regarding the role of human judgment as opposed to machine. AI models will be trustworthy only if data is trustworthy. Just a comment before I say thank you. What machine learning is all about? Suppose you have a 10,000 patient data. All 10,000 patients are well known to you, whether I'm talking of oncology, so whether they are malignant or non-malignant. You know it. You create a model. Out of 10,000, 8,000, you give to the machine that this is my data. Machine will read it according to that model. And now once it is ready, you give those to 2,000 as test model. You are testing the machine, although you know the output before that, because you have the 10,000 data on known persons. But you are testing the machine whether it is working properly or not by creating a model. So 8,000, according to 8,000 you have created model. Now by giving 2,000 you are testing the machine. If the answer or the output given by the machine is 90% or in that range correct, you say your model is passed. It should be higher than 90-95%. If it is doing that, now your machine is ready to go commercial. With that, thank you very much. This is the site of quantum site. Anybody can go through this. Data is available with the quantum site.
Wait, sir, wait, sir.
With Dr. Chaturvedi was in 1991. He came to BRD Medical College. That time it was in
यूपी चैप्टर।
ये नहीं आ रहा है अब लो भाई सर लुक योर कैमरा वेट सर हुआ सर वेट सर वेट ओके सर इस कैमरे में वेट सर ओके
सेक्रेटरी UPARIs,
First of all, I would like to express my gratitude for inviting me for today's UP chapter annual meeting. I find that the meeting is rich of good scientific content, and I even think that there is no need of a lot of international faculty to come for our meetings anymore, because we have reached that level where it is possible for us to discuss science of the highest standards. Today's topics on breast cancer and also artificial intelligence, etc. was excellent. We know that Dr. Chaturvedi is a big organizer, and he and the UP chapter team has organized this conference so well, and I understand that there are going to be good scientific sessions tomorrow, and before that there is going to be a meeting of the UP chapter here. I don't want to prolong the talk. I wish UP chapter and the annual meeting all success.
thank you, sir, for the few words.
मैं बोलने में थोड़ा कमजोर हूँ, हिंदी में बोलूँगा। गुड इवनिंग टू एवरीबडी एंड वेलकम टू दिस 36th UPARI on behalf of ARI UP chapter. I welcome Dr. Jaiswal, our chief guest, Dr. Huku, who is also my mentor and I have learned a lot from him. Dr. Madhu, elect President ARI, and other dignitaries on the dais and off the dais. So you all are welcome to the city of Gorakhpur, which is also called as city of Yogi Ji nowadays, Baba Yogi, city of Gorakhnath, Shiv Ji की नगरी में आप सबका बहुत बहुत स्वागत है. And again, not taking much time, thank you Dr. Chaturvedi for organizing such a beautiful event. And thank you. Jai Hind.
with the theme Advances in Radiation Oncology with Purpose and Precision. The wise words of Albert Einstein: wisdom is not a product of schooling, but of the lifelong attempt to acquire it. Beautifully captures the spirit of our gathering today. Each year, the UPRI Society Conference provides a unique platform where young radiation oncologists and PG students get the rare opportunity to learn, interact and grow alongside the senior specialists, all within a warm and stimulating academic environment. This year's event is yet another proud milestone that adds a new feather in the illustrious cap of the UPRI Society. As the General Secretary of the Society, it is indeed an honor and privilege for me to extend a heartfelt welcome to all our distinguished faculty members and delegates to this academic feast. On behalf of the entire society, I extend my heartiest congratulations to Dr. N.K. Panoli sir for receiving the Dr. B.N. Lal oration and Dr. Shalil Uppu sir for the Dr. M.C. Pant oration. My sincere appreciation and best wishes go to Dr. A.K. Chaturvedi sir, the organizing chairperson, Dr. Mahmood Khan, the organizing secretary, and the entire organizing committee for their tremendous dedication and hard work in making the conference a grand success. I wish everyone an enriching and enjoyable conference and hope that we take back not only new knowledge but also cherished memories from the spiritual city of Gorakhnath. And one more thing, in the last, that in this UPRI conference, the UPRI Society is also going to inaugurate, or we are going to start the formal official UPRI Society directory and the UPRI Society e-newsletter, which will be displayed right now.
Thank you, sir. Now, as we are already late in this conference, so we have called the chairperson, 36 UPRI Con, Dr. A.K. Chaturvedi sir, Director, Chaturvedi Cancer Hospital and Research Center, for the Ashirvachan.
डॉक्टर चक्रपाणी ने मिला है इस समय पहले से हमारे मुख्य अतिथि और टोटू साहब बैठे हुए हैं, डॉक्टर पाल, उनको पहले बोलना था।